Welcome to SEPSA Talk. I am Evans Apia Kisi, the host of SEPSA Talk. SEPSA is Center for Better Society Advocacy and Research Africa. SEPSA Africa is a non-profit organization which believes in a better society for all. We in SEPSA Africa believe that a better society begins with you and I. Hashtag, a better society begins with me. For more information, please log on to www.sepsaafrica.org. You can also follow us on our various social media platforms: YouTube, SEPSA Talk, Facebook at SEPSA Africa, Instagram, SEPSA Africa, Twitter at SEPSA Africa. Today, we bring you another interesting discussion on how do we promote credible manifestos for nation development. To help us deal with this important issue are Dr. Ishmael Rekun. He is health and social policy researcher and a policy analyst. He currently is a policy analyst for the Ministry of Energy and Resources, Regina, Canada. He holds a PhD in public policy from the Johnson Shoyama Graduate School of Public Policy, USASK, Canada. He holds MA in political science, public administration from the Brook University, Ontario, Canada. He also holds a BA in political science from the University of Ghana, Legon. His expertise lies in health and social policy, mineral land policy, and elections. Once again, welcome to SEPSA Talk, Dr. Rekun.
Evans, thank you, and I'm honored to be back again. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Our next guest is Mr. Lord Edusei Akins. He's a doctoral researcher at University of London School of Oriental and African Studies. His research focuses on international development policy and biosecurity. He holds a Master of Science from Stockholm University, Sweden, Master of Science from Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, Sweden, and Bachelor of Science from KNUST, Ghana. Once again, you're welcome to SEPSA Talk, Mr. Lord Edusei Akins.
Thank you. I'm glad to be on the show.
And our final guest for today is Professor Enoch Opoku-Antwi. He's an associate professor of leadership and management at Viterbo University, La Crosse, Wisconsin. He's a leadership consultant, he's an author and civic educationist. He holds a PhD in business organizational leadership from the Indiana Wesleyan University, Indiana, USA. He holds MSc in business organizational leadership from the Mount St. Joseph University, Cincinnati, Ohio, USA. And he holds a B.Ed psychology from the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. Welcome once again, Professor Enoch Opoku-Antwi, to SEPSA Talk.
Thank you, Evans. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you all. And viewers, I can promise you that today also we would have a very interesting discussion. I decided to talk about the background after introducing my guest today. And as the topic is, we look at how do we promote credible manifestos for nation development, looking at it from the African perspective. One of the things we should know is that the use of party manifestos for governing a nation has become a world culture and a global institutionalization. Though manifestos may not necessarily be binding, they are official documents and sometimes oral policies that must be fulfilled by a ruling party to avoid being punished by voters in the next election. Hence, it is important for citizens to better understand what party manifestos actually are, prior to an election. This will enable electorates to vote for parties with sound national ideologies and attainable ambitions. And in this episode, this is exactly what we do. We try to unpack what manifestos are and eventually highlight various mechanisms regarding how to promote a responsible and a sustainable manifesto for the greater good of the people in Africa as a whole. So this is exactly what we have on the table today, gentlemen. And once again, you are welcome to SEPSA Talk.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. So I will start straight away without wasting any much time. And I'll begin with Dr. Rekun. Dr. Rekun, so people have been asking this question, whether political party manifesto is necessary at all. But maybe before you deal with that question, you combine it with what is political party manifesto for those who probably are not aware, and whether it is necessary at all in our politics.
Yeah, thanks, Evans. I think political parties have been developing manifestos. And basically what these manifestos seek to do is to outline the visions, the beliefs, the aims and objectives the party intend to pursue when they are elected into power. Okay, so as long as there's election and political parties are participating, we expect that they put forward something for the people to vote on. And that's where manifesto comes in. It's a document. They do it almost before every election. They have to prepare this document. And they are supposed to outline their policies, what programs they intend to pursue after attaining power. In fact, there's a whole lot of manifestos, in our political history. Okay, even beyond Ghana, we know of the popular Communist Manifesto, 1848, okay, in Europe, which was written by, some of you are in Germany, your own German philosophers, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Okay, so they talk about the capitalist system in Europe and how it was bringing about inequality within the society. And based on that, they predicted that there's likely to be a revolution by the poor or the low class against the higher class in order to overtake the system or the political system in place. And that will eventually lead to socialism. As to whether that occurred is an issue, but at least they were able to analyze the political situation within which they found themselves. And you go further, even in the same Europe, you talk about the Fascist Manifesto of 1919, which also, talked about, minimum wages, reducing the voting age to 18. It's also talked about the role of unions in running, in running businesses in the country, and also the importance of property tax. It's also talk about women's role in politics. So you see that from these manifestos, you realize a common feature, which is that they try to understand or try to conceptualize the political situation within which they find themselves, and then take a position on those political issues. Okay, so that has been the foundation of manifesto drafting, okay, across the world by political parties. In Ghana, for instance, we can trace the genesis of our manifesto, political parties manifesto, to the 1951 election. In fact, since 1951, Ghana has had about 13 general elections and about 3 presidential runoffs. Okay, the most recent was in 2008. So when you look at all these parties actually talk about the issues they face. Let's look at the 1951 election, which is seen as the first election in Ghana. You see the political competition between the CPP, a Convention People Party, led by Dr. Nkrumah, and then UGCC, okay, fighting or even competing between themselves. And the basis of their competition were outlined in their manifesto. So we had the CPP coming up with the Towards the Goal manifesto, and the UGCC also coming up with the plan for the nation. And in this manifesto, you see that they also outline the social problems they face. Okay, they talk about, at that time, we are fighting for independence, so they talk about decolonization. Okay, and giving more role to Africans to rule, or even to take part in the affairs of the state. And they also talk about, in the economic front, they talk about industrialization. They talk about modernizing agriculture. They also talk about, health, providing national health service, and even free education. Nkrumah actually promised free education for everybody until the age of 16, even at that time. So before even independence, political parties have started drafting manifestos in Ghana. Okay, and that has been the core, or the basis upon which subsequent manifestos have been written. When you look at the manifesto of NPP, NDC, you see similar, effort trying to address some of the some of the social issues they find within the state. Okay, employment. They talk about agriculture, modernizing agriculture, infrastructure, mechanization, diversification of agriculture. We've heard this over and over again. And I think they saw their ideas from this. And also because probably the issues we face have not really changed so much since we got independent. So that's why they keep repeating themselves in the manifesto. But there are, as to whether manifestos are necessary or not, depends on where you stand. But I think one thing I would like to emphasize is that even within Ghana's constitution, we talk about democracy leading to promoting the welfare of the people. Okay, so that should be the ultimate goal of democracy. And in the constitution, especially section 55, you see that political parties are enjoined, okay, to, galvanize or shape public perception about policy issues, and also to try to mobilize support around policy issues. And also, it's even said that there should be equal opportunity for all the various political parties to actually explain their manifestos or their policies to the public, so that they can vote wisely. So when you look at all these things, you realize that even though manifesto is not specifically mentioned in the Constitution of Ghana, and of course many states, we can infer the extent to which manifestos are critical for a democratic dispensation. They are necessary. I see that to be necessary because when a party wins government, wins the election, they are supposed to form a government. And right there, they are supposed to promote the well-being of the people, which is their ultimate mandate. So if we want government to provide all those social goods and improve the welfare of the people, then of course, we need to be sure that these parties or this government that will be formed actually have something on their plate before we give them the mandate. So it's very important. As a political system or as a democracy, we need manifesto in order to help put the social needs of the people in the right direction. But even at the level of political parties also need manifesto. Sometimes we talk about political parties as though they have a consensus, people made up of people that agree on every issue at the same rate. No, political parties have factions. Sometimes there are different, opinion on every issue, or even most of the issues. Political parties have people within them that have different opinion on them. And that's example when you talk about a Akufo-Addo free education policy, secondary school policy, for instance. The finance minister was saying that, probably we shouldn't have made it universal for everybody. This is because there are some people within the party that may have a whole different opinion. So manifesto help to guide the campaign process, okay, so that people will speak with one accord, okay, so that there wouldn't be, conflicting opinion. Manifesto is supposed to guide the various political parties so that they all have one voice, so that they can, appeal to the voters. But also voters need manifesto, because I don't want to give you my mandate until I know what you have for me. So manifesto help voters to know what parties have for them. Okay, whether this party is going to or has the interest to create jobs, employment. Okay, so you have to look at what they are offering, what are they selling to us. By that way, we are able to choose between A and B or not. So it's a good way to help, shape the choice of voters as well. So when you say what as to whether political party manifestos are necessary or not, my answer will be that they are necessary. Political party manifestos are necessary. So far as our democratic dispensation requires that parties promote the welfare of the people, then they should begin thinking through the policy ideas they have before they come to power. In Ghana, we have only 4 years in power. So coming to power before you think through what you want to do itself will be non-starter, and it's not going to help with our democratic process. And that's why I think that our manifestos are critical.
Very, very well. Well said. But I just wanted to follow up with one more question. So, because you gave the history of, how manifestos came into being, and also you touched on some significance or functions of manifestos already. Is it the case that should I put the question this way? Manifestos, does it reflect the ideologies or the convictions of a particular political party, or it's usually about what voters are willing to buy? Because you did mention that they would also have to sell something to them, or it's normally a combination of the two?
Yeah, I would say that manifestos. Okay, I think one thing we must note is that manifesto is actually a political document. In fact, it is a strategic document for the political parties, okay, in order to, win or to convince or appeal to voters to vote for them, okay. But of course, we also know the limitations that we face, okay. We know that these are political material because a political party is a political material. But when you win power, okay, you are supposed to execute the welfare or promote the welfare of the people. That is a responsibility they have to do. It's just unfortunate that this kind of these are two opposing forces or sides, two opposing sides of the coin. Okay, political parties might win the election. At the end of the day, they are also supposed to also provide the goods and services they promise the people in that context. Okay, so I see that manifestos are political things. They try to win the support of the people. Okay, but also they have the interests of the nation at heart, and it is important that political parties put the interests of the nation at heart because you provide a criteria. I think one thing people have seen that manifestos have actually become a yardstick and a parameter for voters to assess the performance of the political party. Okay, and it is because of this that political parties must not focus on the voters' appeal as the ultimate goal. Okay, but they should look at the whole nation, okay, or the interests of the nation as the fundamental force behind that. Otherwise, in the subsequent election, you provide ammunition for the opposition party to campaign against you. It also provides ammunition for voters to vote against you because you put yourself at risk for people to assess your performance. And we have seen that in Ghana more recently. Okay, the MPP, NDC, even Imani, civil society organizations assessing the performance of MPP administration. And this is supposed to shape the extent to which they have been able to implement the objective they set out.
Thank you.
At the election.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rekun. And I would move straight to Professor Entry because, well, yes, Dr. Rekun already has set the basis that it's indeed very, very necessary in our politics because politicians or political parties, one of their aims, even if we disagree, is to improve the welfare of the people, and they need to put something on the table in the form of a document, which is a manifesto. The question we ask is that, should it be the basis for our nation development? Should it be part, or what's your opinion on that?
Well, thank you very much, Evans. I think the answer is it depends. And people are looking for leadership and a consistent message. But it begins with a question. The world is hazy, no clean lines or sharp points. What do? You focus on the camera. So manifestos start with a question, not a data. And the question is, what do the people need? So manifestos are like statistics. Statistics starts with a question, not with data. So I come back to your question. Should it form the basis for nation development? Yes or no? It depends on where you stand. So I go back to what Dr. Rekon said. He did a good job by being a good history teacher. Talking about the history of a manifesto is not easy. He did a yeoman job. It's a written document, so manifestos should be written. And it talks about the intentions, the motives, the views of a political party. I compared that to individual, manifestos like New Year resolution. You have intention, you have motives, and you have views for the year. But does it happen always? The answer is no. So most of the time we have great intentions in our manifestos. And now you can see the world over, it's turned to a charade where they brag to the people, I'll do A, B, C to D, and it doesn't happen. It's been turned into slogans. Yes, we can. Make America great. All those kind of slogans, and does it happen? No, it doesn't happen because manifestos have been clustered into slogans that is catchy to the people. And what do we see? We don't see much. So if you look at the advanced country compared to the developing countries, you can see that the manifestos are different. Here in America, we talk about healthcare, insurance for the elderly people, how they can save veterans association, suicide rate. And now we have COVID-19, which is also going to be part of every political party's manifesto. So manifestos, again, I say they are like averages. And averages do not exist in most cases. They are only ideas. The truly average person does not exist. And the idea of an average is what is useful. So the idea of a manifesto is what is useful. So let's look at if it is really good for our development. Partially, it's good for our nation's development because it's the basis that they're going to sell what they want to sell to the voters. That if you vote for me, I'll build roads, bridges, I'll take care of healthcare, I'll take care of education. These are some ideas. It's not the entirety of the ideas, but some ideas that people can look at and vote for you. So partially, we can look at that for nation development. It also shows their plan to govern. So at least you have a plan. If you want to be a serious leader, the first question is show the plan. What plan have you got? And you can tell that it's a plan. It also shows their vision. And vision is a key factor in leadership. The next point is that it's the genesis of valid political party position, immediate issue to the people. So you have immediate needs of the people. I started with this preamble that begins with a question. And the question addresses the needs of the people. Definitely, manifestos look into that. It's a way of addressing the needs of the people. And it's also streamlines how they will campaign on the issues. So it's kind of a guide for them on how they're going to campaign. It's also a main tool for a campaign message. If you don't have a manifesto, what message are you taking to the people? So it helps political parties. It's also important and useful document in politics because you want to look at your manifesto and then get the votes. So these are some of the ideas that I want to share. You can only get votes from manifestos, but that should not form the basis of a nation development. When we come to the second part, I will explain why all these points are necessary. But all in all, I think it's a good document that people can look at what you sell into the populace, and then they can vote for you.
Well said, Prof. But if you say, it's a question and not a data, yes, I get the angle that it's all about what the citizens need. But don't you also need data to be able to analyze what the citizens need? Because you probably might not be able to satisfy the needs of everyone. So how do you draw that distinction when you say it's more of a question and not a data?
I said it begins with a question. It begins with a question. I think not most people know that even statistics begin with a question. People think it begins with a data. No, it begins with a question. And then you begin to analyze it and get the results you're looking for. In the same way, manifestos begins with a question. The question is, what do the people need?
Okay.
Because you can draw any manifesto. If it doesn't address the need of the people, you haven't done a good job. That was my point.
All right. Very well. Well said. So, Lord, I would come to you. Now, I think it's pretty much clear that manifestos are indeed necessary. Prof already said that it depends whether it should be the basis for a nation development. And indeed, we'll look at, how to go about it if it should be in the second round. But the question we want to ask you is that, so why is it that in the past, I mean, I think Dr. Rekun already mentioned also the fact that usually political parties necessarily are not able to implement most of the things that they say. You have already written an article around political party manifestos, a brilliant one indeed. And the question we ask you is, why is there always a mismatch between manifesto documents and, actual policies usually implemented by political parties on the ground?
Thank you for having me. I think that my two honorable guests, they've done very good in helping us to understand why the need for manifestos and why the history of manifestos and what we need to do to be able to have a good manifesto. But as you rightly pointed out in the question, if you look at the history of manifesto development, most political parties around the world do have manifestos, all right. But then when they come into power, most of the time there is a mismatch or there is a huge gap between what is written in the document and what is actually implemented on the ground. And I think one of the key reasons why there's always a mismatch, or the reasons why the results are always not the best, is the fact that most manifestos are not based on realistic assessment of, one, the resources of the country, two, the capabilities of the country, and three, whether or not the country has what it takes to implement the manifesto or the policies and programs that are embedded in the manifesto documents. So people just want to develop manifesto. They don't know how much money the country has, how much money the country has got in terms of building, say, a dam. So they have thousands of projects and programs written in the document, but they have no idea how much money is needed or how much money the nation has got to be able to implement those projects and programs. So they realize that when they are voted into power and they become, say, the president or they form the government, they realize that, okay, we have thousands of projects or programs in this manifesto, but the money that we have as a nation can only help us to deliver only one. So that is what I call the mismatch. There's a mismatch of resources, mismatch of human. When I say resource, I'm talking about financial and human. For instance, you want to build a dam or you want to build an atomic energy. You need a nuclear energy to solve Ghana's problems. You have it, as part of your program? Do you have the human resources to build an atomic energy or to build a nuclear plant? So you have in a document that we want to solve Ghana's energy problems by building nuclear energy. But then we don't even know whether we have the enough resources, human resources, to implement that project. So there's always a mismatch. Another reason why there's also a mismatch is the fact that there is also the content of these manifestos are not well designed. Some political parties think that's okay. Party A has got a manifesto, so I must also have one. So they don't take their time to design the manifesto. One of the reasons why there's also a mismatch is the fact that they are not costed. See, I can have thousands of projects in a document and say, this is my manifesto. But how much does the things that are put, how much do they cost? If they cost more than what the nation resources require, there's no way I may be able to implement it. But the reason is that they are not costed. When I say they are not costed, how much that the NPP even know that the SHS program that they wanted to implement, did they know that it will cost so much? It was never costed. Did they also know that the one dime, one village, or one factory, one district, or one district, one dam, did they cost it? They didn't cost it. So right now we are being told that about 80% of the projects that are being implemented with regards to the one dam and one district, these dams cannot be used. About 80%, that is what we are being told. 80% cannot be used. Simply because, yes, they want to do it, but because they didn't cost it, they've gone on the ground, they are trying to build a dam, they realize that it will cost more than what they had anticipated for. So right now, they have been forced to slash the budget, but slashing the budget will also affect quality. And that is why people are saying that the dams cannot be used. So one reason why there's always a mismatch is that in the documents, they do not cost the projects and programs. And if you do not cost it, when you want to implement it, you realize that, no, we can't do it because it will cost more than we have anticipated. So one, the designs are always in poor. Some political parties think that it is a fanfare thing. Everybody is doing it, let us do it. They forget that it is not just a fanfare thing, it is a document that represents the party's agenda. And therefore, if you are having a party's agenda, you should be able to tell us how much that project will cost. For instance, when the NDC was in power, they were talking about building the Eastern Corridor. Why is it that these projects have not been completed? They couldn't complete them because they didn't cost it when they were writing it down in the document. When they started implementing it, they realized that, oh, this project cost more than we have budgeted for. And that is why if you look at Ghana, we have so many uncompleted projects around, so many of them. Part of it is party politics, but one realistic thing is that they were not costed in the manifestos, and therefore, when they tried to implement it, they realized that the budget was too much for the project. So, but if you recently, I heard the NDC saying that 40% of MPP manifesto document, the things that they said in the document, only 14% has been implemented. Only 14%. Well, that is politics. But if I am to say, from my own personal opinion, I think that about 60% of the MPP items, the items the MPP manifesto have been implemented. However, the quality of it is also, because if you look at the SHS program, for instance, they never anticipated that there will be 2 shifts. If they had anticipated that and then costed it, they will never come to this situation whereby right now, some of the students are in school, others are in the house. So it has to do with cost. And if you don't cost it, and if you don't do a proper, and costing demands research, you need to identify what are the individual things that will require for the project to become successful. You need human resource, you need material resource, you need financial resource, you need technical expertise. If you don't do all this, but just insert it in your document that, okay, we're going to have SHS and people become happy, when it comes to implementation, definitely you're going to have 2 shifts. The same students completing the same year, some are going to finish school, others are going to finish later. And it all because the thinking that went into the development of that manifesto item, the thinking wasn't deep enough. There wasn't much research on that. It wasn't costed. So for me, for the mismatch, it has to do with the fact that the realistic understanding or assessment of the nation's capacity asset, they were all not taken into consideration. 2, some political parties think that, okay, let us do it because others are doing it. 3, priorities of the political parties cannot be changed when they come into power. For instance, right now, MPP never anticipated that COVID will come in. Now COVID has become a priority. The government has 2 options. Do we open up the economy and let everybody die? Or do we save the citizens and then abandon the economy? So most governments in the world are in a dilemma. They want to do 2 things: save the country or save the economy and save the citizens. But if you don't have this in your manifesto, which is what I call the priorities, if you don't have this in your manifesto, when the realities happen, you are going to be in trouble. So I will end here and then somebody come in.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord. But your last sentence, I wanted to, but how do they deal with unforeseen circumstances? Because you brought in COVID-19 and other things. Do you think the political parties have a way to deal with unforeseen circumstances?
They do, and in every political manifesto, you should have what is called miscellaneous. Sometimes the miscellaneous happen to be greater than the issues that are even considered important. And COVID is one of them. It is a miscellaneous item, but now its importance and its gravity on Ghana's importance as a country is so huge that all other priorities have been swept aside. All other priorities. Now we are not talking even about roads. We are not talking about electricity. Everything is now COVID. So it tells you that if you don't anticipate well, even the little thing that you think is a miscellaneous can then become the critical issue, and then it will demand all your resources. Right now, with all the resources that Ghana as a country has got, is being geared towards saving citizens from dying. But look at the air system. There's no flight between Ghana and any other country. So if you want to even import goods to come and save people in terms of food, how are you going to do it? So everything is grounded. And that is why sometimes when you say miscellaneous, don't just say miscellaneous, have a plan for that. So that when the miscellaneous happen, or when the issue that you have identified as a miscellaneous, when it becomes the critical issue, then you have the resources to command it. Otherwise, it is a miscellaneous, but it will eat most of the time, and you may not be able to address it.
Thank you very much. But I still have a follow-up, and with that question also, I think it's open to the other 2 guests. So you have given us some points which explains why there is often a mismatch between the political party manifestos and policies being implemented. So is it fair now then to conclude that political party manifestos are irrelevant to nation development and they are only a means to, you know, lie to voters in order to get to power? Because also Prof, I know
think
Prof.
that is a means but not an end.
Okay.
You know, that's what I'm gathering from what he said. He made some powerful points there. It's a means to an end but not an end in itself. If you look at the route we talked about, how can you say one district, one dam when you don't have the money for it? Are you going to borrow the money from another country? You've not costed anything. You've not budgeted for anything. And because of that, you do a shoddy job. You're going to have shell shocks. There's an elephant in the room that has not been addressed. And then you're going to have ad hoc measures. So it's just a means. It's just like you've seen a woman you like and you running your mouth that, you know, I will buy this and that for you. But when the woman comes to stay with you, realize that you don't even own a bicycle, but you promise her a car. That is exactly what I see. If you compare what is happening with manifestos to actually what is being implemented on the ground.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Evan, just to add a little bit.
Go ahead.
I would like to say that I think one of the reasons why manifestos are not often achieved, especially in our context, usually depends, I would say, is mostly as a result of the process by which the manifestos themselves are developed. Okay, sometimes, and then many of the times, for instance, I learned that sometimes the manifestos are designed by probably a few people within the party. They just come together and think for the nation or for the political party. Okay, so in the process, they don't involve mostly the grassroots. They don't involve experts. Okay, like, you know, Edisa was talking about costing. You know, they don't involve experts in the design of the policy. And when that happens, I mean, issues like cost, okay, effect, may not be analyzed. Okay, and apart from one village, one dime, we realize that even during Professor Mills' time, you remember, I've been doing some research in the health sector. So you remember one-time premium. You remember those times. And that one-time premium did not materialize. And the reason is that, you know, one-time premium basically means, I mean, a national health service, which means the state is going to fund the system, the health system. So one-time premium, are you going to put, are you saying that, I mean, when you start the health insurance policy, are you going to accumulate the health or premium that individual would have paid in 10 years into one and they pay it once? Or what does it actually mean? Okay, so the extent that we don't involve experts, the extent that we don't make it largely consultative, and only few people, sometimes even the presidential candidate and his friends will come just team up and design the manifesto, actually affect the extent to which they are able to implement the content when they assume office. And so I just wanted to pass that one across, that we should take the policy or the design of the manifestos themselves seriously and make it quite more consultative.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll come to that in the second round. And Prof, I'm sure would, give more highlights to that. But Lord, before we move to the second round, which I would also allow Albert Kobina-Mensah, who is the CEO of SEPSA, he has an intervention to make, so we would later hear from him. But Lord, do you have anything to say with the last question that I posed, whether it's more of, as Prof has already described, that it's more of a means to an end and not an end in itself?
Yes, I agree perfectly with my colleague. Manifestos are just plans of what we want to achieve when we come to power. But as a plan, it is not written or cast in stone. It is bound to change, and it changes when circumstances even change. For instance, you have, like I was talking about COVID, it has changed everything. It has changed all priorities. So if you think that, okay, this manifesto is it is a silver bullet, there's nothing like a silver bullet manifesto. It is just the plan that we want to achieve. but we should have at the back of our mind that anything can happen and it can be put off course. And that is what has happened. Most manifestos in the world are now off course. They are not on track simply because of one single incident. And that is also one of the reasons why, as a country, we don't have to put too much faith in one single issue.
Okay.
Don't put too much faith in the manifesto. It's a proper document. It is an acceptable document that should, when you have the resources to implement, give a better result, a better outcome. But don't put all your faith in it, because something can go wrong and it can affect everything that you are doing. So yeah, it is good to have it. Yes, it is good to have one and even to follow it. But then have at the back of your mind that anything can happen, and that can put everything off gear. Yes.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad that you kind of ended with also a question which we would see in the next round, how we will be able to develop a responsible and sustainable manifesto that seek to improve the welfare of the greater people and also credible one. Albert, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yes, yeah, you're also welcome to SEPSA Talk, and thanks for joining us. You said you have an intervention. What is it?
Yes, so I wanted to make an intervention. Do I have to put my video on or something?
No, it's fine.
Okay, so I wanted to back on what Dr. Rekun was also saying about consultation. You know, one of the impediments to implementing a manifesto document is actually even how they design the manifesto. And you ask yourself, to what extent were the people even consulted on the various stakeholders? Okay, to what extent were they mattered into the decision making, or to what extent were they mattered in the design of the manifesto? You ask yourself. You make a manifesto document. You want to construct a road in, say, Obuasi. You want to put some boreholes. You want to put maybe other projects. But these are projects that you have designed, okay? But to what extent did you ask the community if they actually wanted that particular project that you want to come? You know, this kind of top-down decision making where everything is being made at the central level, and they only go and deliver at the communities, do not become sustainable. So one of the impediments to implementing manifesto is the extent of community or stakeholder or public consultation or participation in the design of the manifesto. When you don't consult people, okay, in designing manifestos, okay, promises, it leads to misplaced priorities, okay, and that will that will hinder you implementing the actual the main projects that are of particular interest and that matter to the development of the people.
Thank you very much, Albert, for your input. I'm sure we might even come back to you again. So we start with the second round, and the discussion has already started from Lord, Dr. Rekun, and then Professor Entry have all said something with regards to how to develop a responsible manifesto, a manifesto that is credible, so that we would not see a lot of the mismatches as we have discussed over here. So I want to start with you, Prof, first, and I like what my good friend Edmond, who is also a regular panelist, sent to me, that so how do we develop a manifesto, you know, beyond the curtains? But the question I ask now, also following from what he said, is, so what should be the main stages, you know, of manifesto development? With Albert already brought in an intervention that it should be consultative, just like Dr. Rekun has said, and to want you to walk us through what will be the, not the perfect situation, but the ideal situation to develop a manifesto.
Okay.
Who develops, who monitors, who audits, and the likes. Thank you.
Thank you, Evans. I think Albert was passionate about involving every stakeholder, and that is one of the key things I'll talk about. One thing that we did not talk about is that political parties are just two sides of persuasions. You know, they want to rule, they want to lead the country, but they have different ways and philosophies of doing that. So not enough to know, just enough for a better guess. And that is why they have manifestos. They don't know enough, but they know quite enough for a better guess of what they think the people need. And that is what they put into a manifesto. The problem for the development is that we don't know the whys. In fact, all the research that I've seen, if you don't have a why for doing something, there's a high percentage that you're going to fail. Because when you get to the end, those of you who have done your PhDs and stuff like that, you get to a point, and the question is, how did I get myself into this? But the why will push you to the end of it, because that gives you the passion from within. So let's ask these 5 W's. What should be the first stage? Who, what, when, where, and why. So you have a manifesto. Who is in charge of what? What are we going to do? When are we going to do that? Where? And then the why. Until these 5 W's are answered, I think that we're not going to have a credible manifesto. Because Lord raised this issue of resources, about costing. Once we are able to identify all the 5 W's of the who is in charge of what are we going to do, when are we going to do that, where and why, we can never implement manifestos. That is why they start even roads and they can't complete. Because the when is not addressed, the where is not addressed, the why is not addressed, the who is not addressed. Then Dr. Reku also made a good point about not research is done into most of these manifestos. We don't have experts. So political parties will meet, they have the party elders. They call 1 or 2 other people who have PhDs, a couple of people, some engineers here and there, and say, what do you think about this? And they bring their ideas. That is put into their manifesto. And most of the issues in the manifestos are hyped, so that you don't even know the stage that they are starting from. It's just a sampling of ideas. So we need research. That should be the basis of it. The first stage is the research. Once we're able to identify the 5 W's, the second stage is the research into how political parties produce the manifestos. We need the research on that, because that makes it more predictable but less deterministic. If you don't go through the 5 W stage and then the research, you can have a document that is going to be predictable, that, well, they can do it, but can we determine that it will be implemented or not? That cannot be established. And we also have a wonderment of the pattern of the relationship between what they say they will do and what they do. One thing that most people are not aware is that relationships are different from correlations. So relationship is different from correlation. The fact that A plus B will give you C does not necessarily mean that C plus B will give you an A. And most political parties simplify things. They think that, once we come to power, we'll have the money. We're going to collect some taxes and then we'll have rules, we have this. But when you get there, you realize that it's not easy to do that. And that is why we have a lot of chaos in the implementation stage, because the base is wrong. And because of that, we cannot keep a better pace of it. And that is why it's also not valid. That document is not valid. So when we talk about credibility, the purpose of which it intends to measure what is written in that document, most of the time is not accomplished. So when we're talking about credibility, let's look at how valid these documents are. And I don't think they've passed the validity test. So we should also look at that. Then the stakeholders. When we talk about stakeholder, everybody who have interest in the nation's development is a stakeholder. How consultative are they when they are putting these documents? They don't consult much. In fact, they don't even want the opponent, the other political parties, to know what they have in their manifestos, because they think they will steal it. They think they will steal it. I've had situations where even if you have credible ideas to speak in parliament, some parliamentarians will not say it because the other political party will steal their ideas, which is interesting. You will be surprised to know that even the MP's Common Fund that we have, when it comes to time to give the MP's Common Fund, those whose parties are in office will get theirs, and those who are in opposition will not get theirs. So Africa is a different agenda altogether. you know, where it is established by the law that everybody MP should get a common fund, those whose government are in power will have theirs, and you will not have yours, because when you have yours, you will give it to the people who become popular. So we also have some politicking in there, in the way these things are even implemented. We also need monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring and evaluation is a key factor in the way we implement manifestos, because it's easier said than done. You can have these documents, but who is monitoring to see? And that is why I think that if we can have a ministry of values and accountability, ministry of values and accountability, you know, policies and everything, I believe that values is everything in governance. If we have value of timeliness, that alone, if we can have leaders in Africa who can have values of timeliness, we don't play over time like Europeans are doing and Americans are doing, that would go a long way to help us. So we need a ministry of values and accountability, where we're going to make sure that the political party manifestos are really implementable. They are established, they are credible. It's just not words that they are putting together. Some ministry should take care of that. I know that MPP have a ministry of planning and stuff like that. Dr. Tony Edu was given that position to be, you know, charge of moderate, but he said that nobody's using his ideas. We also have the roles should be very clear. Roles of political parties and their responsibilities in implementing manifestos are not clear. So that is a stage we should also look at. The roles and the responsibilities are not clear. The nation develops when it's a win-win power. I think that they are more of paying allegiance to their manifesto and their political party instead of the national agenda. And we need to implement a national policy. That is also the highest, the apex of the stage, where we have individuals coming with their different manifestos, but we need a national institution where we're going to collect all these manifestos and see whether we have the resources, who's going to take care of A or B, and the why behind it, so that that will become a national policy. So my proposal is that when we have that ministry of values and accountability, or, you know, evaluation and whatever name, fancy name they want to give to it, they will collect all the manifestos of each political party and see the good tenets of each and bring it to a national policy. Take it to the people and say that this is what we want to do for the next 5, 10, 20 years. I believe in long-termism, you know, 10, 15, 20 years plan instead of just 2, 3, 4 years. Because you can see that the way we are even changing the educational system. This government is 3 years, this government is 4 years, the next government comes is, you know, it's free, the next government is coming and say, no, we're not going to pay teacher training allowances. We are toying with a lot of ideas in our manifesto. And because of that, we put a lot of stress on our students, on every policy that we have in the name of satisfying a political agenda. And in doing that, we all forgo the national agenda, which is the development that everybody in the country will be proud of.
Thank you very much, Professor Entry. But I have one follow-up question. I mean, you have highlighted a number of points that is important or relevant for a credible manifesto development. One of them that is interesting to me is your point on monitoring and evaluation. And you say we should have Ministry of Values and Accountability, but you also brought in the dimension of politicking. But how is that feasible? How will the opposition party allow the ruling party that obviously controls this ministry to vet their manifestos? Is this possible?
You know, Professor Mills tried something in 2010, which was a great way to start this. He set out the Constitutional Review Commission and brought a professor, a Ghanaian professor who was living outside the country, to come and chair that commission. And their recommendation was simple, that we should have a national agenda so that when one government starts a policy, the other government cannot stop but continue to finish it. And unfortunately, Mahama said, no, we have our own agenda, then we're going to implement it. If he had made that a legal instrument, an ally, then Akufo-Addo wouldn't have been able to implement a different thing, but to continue with this and then add something to it. You see, when you build in a house, you add to the blocks. Let's get the foundation right, and then we add to it. But he missed that opportunity, and because of that, MPP will come and implement free senior high school and everything they want to implement. When MPP come, they also come with their own, manifesto. And then you have many affordable buildings that have been, they are just weeds and rats and everything is eating them up because the other government don't want to complete what the other started. And that is all coming from this manifesto. So look at the harm these manifestos have caused to the nation more than good. Yes, we need an institution that will make sure that bring your manifestos. You want to build A, you want to build B. Well, we can pick good tenants from yours. We can pick good tenants from yours. Let's bring them together to build a nation. At the end of the day, I don't know why MPP should be happy if they build bridges and roads. It's for the nation. If the roads are good, it's for the whole country. If the bridges are good, it's for the whole country. If the health system is good. Now, because of COVID, you cannot even travel to the other country, even Togo, for health. Stay in your own country. So if we have those policies that somebody comes and say, I want to build hospitals, like we first started with roads. If he was able to finish all roads with the eastern corridors and everything, we'll not be sitting here talking about roads and dual carriages. That has been done. Then another government can focus on another thing. That is the only way we can develop. If we talk about the musicians talk about something called staccatos, this is packets of development agenda from manifestos, and they all don't add up to the national agenda of we as a nation wanting to develop. Yes, yours is good, but does it add to the national agenda? Until we get to that level of a national policy for development, we'll be running in cycles of parties coming with their own agenda that, kicks to the base of their people, but not to the nation.
So perhaps, like we have the special prosecutor, maybe an independent body, if I got you right now, to be able to vet these manifestos. Because the question then is, if we have such a ministry that vets the manifesto, there's the fear that the opposition party might be victimized, or their ideas could be stolen, or their manifestos could be rubbished.
That should be non-partisan.
Okay. So
our civil service, one day we have to talk about that. Our civil service are not supposed to be partisan.
Okay, very well.
Supposed to be neutral people, technocrats, expertise will be making sure that these things work. Because politicians will always be politicians. But we need an independent body that will make sure that what they say they want to do is being done in the right way for the people.
Thank you very much, Professor Entry. So I come to you, Dr. Rekun, and I wanted to ask you about what issues should be addressed in the manifesto. But the emphasis here is more on should because Professor Entry already touched on that. That was his last key point, giving us those points to develop a credible manifesto, where he said that it should be linked to the national policy. There should be one bit of a national policy for it. So the question I ask you is it necessary? Should we link our political manifestos to a national development plan or not? So in terms of what issues should be addressed, should it be more of political party ideologies or vote buying potentials, or it should be, linked to a national development plan?
Yeah, Evans. Yeah, I mean, given the options you are giving, I would say that a manifesto should be linked to a national development plan. Okay, and national development plan actually talks about what a nation will need, and we have various plans. I think NDC, under the regime of NDC, they came out with a 40 years development plan. Sometimes I see that some of these plans are they have too long a perspective. Like the focus is 40 years, it's a lot of years. And given the
There's
nature,
no plan that should be 40 years. I don't know how.
Political situation.
40 years. You are there at most.
Yeah. So 40 years development plan.
Sorry for interrupting, my friend.
Yeah, so I would say that we should link our manifestos towards national development. Okay, and national development plan is one of the sources of information or ideas for, designing a manifesto. But I don't see it as the only, option to look out for when you are designing a manifesto. But basically, if we have a national development plan, it helps guide manifesto drafters and of course the nation. And as we have a democratic system that has transitioned, that transition from one government to another, and we have seen that in Ghana these days, having a national development plan can help in guiding choices of politicians. Whichever party come to be. But I don't see it as necessarily the only source. We have, the sustainable development goal, for instance, it's there. I expect that political parties will also consult some of those documents as they design their manifestos. And also, we should look at, we've talked about we should look at the issues within the country. We have to focus on that. I think every manifesto will have to look at the issues within the country. And having a broad-based consultation is the only way we can address these issues. So at Ghana, for instance, we have job situation. It's a very big situation. People have even formed associations, unemployment, graduate association. These are not good things. In a democracy, we shouldn't see job to be a problem because that is a fundamental right. People have to get job in order to be able to provide the basic needs they need. So we should look at the needs of the people. Job creation is one. We should look at restructuring the economy. Ghana's economy has been agrarian and for so long. We have to look at how we can modernize our economy so that it's not only dependent on agrarian and then even the raw material production, for instance. So we should look at diversifying the economy. And we also have to look at, social issues are also key. Poverty in particular is a key issue. And we have to make sure that as we draft manifestos, we take into account the way we are going to address the poverty condition we live and then many of our people live in. We have to make sure that we come up with programs to help address the issue of poverty. But I'll mention two things that we have not actually paid too much attention to. Issue of environment. Okay. Sometimes we think we have the natural resources and we have the trees and others there, and we don't pay too much attention to how we can enhance these resources for posterity's sake. I think it's one of the things we have to look out for in various manifestos. And also immigration. Developing country, we don't really talk about immigration a lot of the time. But, that also creates opportunity for some of these external forces to take control and also destroy our society. We have seen how Chinese, people have been going into mining, small-scale mining in many places, using a very high level of technology to destroy the environment, water system, and resources. And it's because we don't pay attention to how some of these issues actually be considered when we are drafting or even designing our immigration policies. And so political parties must venture into this area and make sure that, people do not come into our country and commit crime and destroy our environment. And that if you do that, these are the consequences, and we are supposed to do A, B, and C. But let me go back because I think your question was basically focusing on on national development plan. I think I went at it, but in order to provide a little bit to add to what Prof talked about, that we should legalize the process of national development program so that political parties will feel compelled to be responsible to the needs of the national development plan. I feel like as a country, we should be able to itemize some of the most important things we need as a nation. Okay, if we need infrastructure, we need a health system that provides particular goods and services to people. Then, beside acts or legislation, I would think that we also come up with something like a statutory allocation for some of these key sectors, areas that we think every political party is supposed to address. Okay, so if, for instance, there is, we have examples like Get Fund. We have Get Fund that goes into education. We also have National Health Insurance Levy that's supposed to go into National Health Insurance. We have District Assembly Common Fund. Until some of these statutory allocations are made, whoever design a national development plan may not be complied with by the political parties. Okay, a new government come to power, they will not feel obligated. The reason is that, one of them you talk about is that some political parties could use that as a means to, to undermine the subsequent government, the new government that will come to be. So they will talk about, they will start projects, for instance. 200 health facilities will be constructed under my administration. Then they will start constructing they may not even have the resources, but they will start the foundation in different places, even though they don't have the resources. Okay, they will start building foundation in 200 constituencies without having any idea how they are going to be able to complete the project. Okay, they don't have any idea. Once your resources are not enough, for me, I think that if you have only resources for only 2 health facilities, you should promise 2, or you should begin, with 2, rather than starting foundation for about 200 of them, and you will never get the resources to complete those projects. That could be a barrier if we want to actually limit political parties to only national development plans. I think we have to look at statutory allocations that will provide the sources of revenue to finance those projects, so that governments, whoever comes to power, will not be able to misuse or misdirect the resource towards another venture. But if you do that, it will be illegal. Okay, until we do that, national development plan may not be able to shape our political process that much. Okay, because political parties will want to come up with their own manifesto, and we expect them to even come out with their own policies. If you don't come out with policies, how are voters going to vote for you? And how will we also be confident that you have even not wasted our time? Queuing in elections and then having you come to power without you doing anything, that you promised. So we need to make sure that we have statutory allocations that is geared towards some of those main projects we think are central to our economy and our society. And that way, we can have a continuity in government. As government comes and a new one comes, projects will continue, and then we will have that kind of system or that kind of society we want to have in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rekun, for sharing with us the issues that should be taken into consideration when political parties are drafting their manifestos. I particularly liked what you also talked about, the fact that it should not be only on the national development plan, but we could also look at SDGs. It could also be linked to other, I would say, global agenda and the rest. So thank you very much on that. And I come to you, Lord, Mr. Edusei. So yes, Prof has given us, should I say, a chronology or steps into developing a good manifesto. And then we have heard from Dr. Reku, who has also touched largely on the issues that should be considered. So it appears now that we are on the same path. It's quite clear. So the final thing we want you to look at is, how do citizens, the ordinary African electorate, how do they judge these political party manifestos, especially if there's going to be a template with which all political parties are going to follow? Would there be a competition at all? And if there is a competition, what should potential electorates look out for in order to be able to arrive at also a credible conclusion, so that it wouldn't seem like they are being lured to vote for political parties or in the name of gaining power? So what do citizens need to do to judge if a particular political party manifesto is credible or not?
Thank you. I think as a citizen, if I'm going to vote for a political party, if you look at Ghana's history or the history of Africa, people tend to vote on so many lines. One of them is on ethnic lines. ethnic and tribal lines. Some also vote based on religion. But as a citizen, if I'm going to vote for a political party, I'm obviously going to look at the manifesto itself and what that manifesto is talking about, addressing my own challenges. For instance, I may be a youth, and if you go to Ghana and in most of Africa, you realize the population of Ghana has been very youthful over the years. In 1960, about 68% of the population were in the youth. When I say the youth, between the ages of 15 and 35. Right now, as we are talking, according to the latest figures, 2010 demographic studies, we realize that more than 60% of the population belong to the youthful group. Therefore, as a youth, what do I want? I want a well-paid employment. I want to be able to educate myself. I want to be able to acquire some of the economic benefits that make life more sustainable. So as a youth, if I'm going to vote for a political party, I'm going to look for some of these things. Does the manifesto address my own challenges? If it doesn't, then it's not a credible manifesto that I can exchange my vote for. Because I know that if I'm going to exchange my vote for that very political party or for that manifesto, then I can be sure that I'm going to get all this that I talked about. Education, if I am still around 18 years, I still want to see that I can continue my education and have a quality of education, not just any education. What about employment? Will I be able to gain a well-paid employment after my studies? If that manifesto is addressing that, then it's a credible manifesto that I can bet my vote on. Then also, does the manifesto also address not only me, personally, but the individual segment, the interest of individual segment. If you go to Ghana, we can break it down into different segments of society. We have the youth, we have the aged, we have women, we have children. So if I am a man, or if as a husband, if there's a manifesto, does it address the challenges of parents? And if it does, then can I vote based on that? So as a parent, I am going to look for whether the manifesto is addressing childcare, because I want to go to work and I want to send my children to school. I may not come back from work early. Will I be able to have a childminder who will take care of my children whilst I'm away? So if a manifesto is not addressing that, then that manifesto is not for me. Two, if I am a youth and I'm looking for employment, is that manifesto addressing my job needs? If it doesn't, then I'm not going to vote for that manifesto. So, this doesn't apply to me alone, it applies to almost everybody. If you are, we know that people from the age of 45 going tend to have medical problems. So if I am 45, is the manifesto addressing the health needs of people in that category? Are there enough policies on health delivery, health infrastructure, for instance, doctors, nurses? Are they, is the manifesto addressing all these issues? If it is, then I can even encourage others to vote for that political party. But I've already said that listing all these things in a manifesto is one thing. Implementing it is another. But the difference between having a good manifesto and implementing that good manifesto is money. And not only money, the expertise that you need to implement them. So I can read MPP manifesto. There may be about 10 or 200 things that they want to do, which will all benefit me. But has that manifesto got what it takes to deliver it? how are they going to implement that manifesto? When I say how, are they going to tax people? Are they going to borrow money? Are they going to, when I say tax, is the tax going to come from, say, consumers? Or it's going to come from businesses? Or is the tax going to come from workers? Consumers are different from workers. Businesses are different from consumers. Businesses may be consumers, all right, but when I say consumers, I'm talking about people who go out to buy bread, sugar, all this. They are consumers. So if the taxes are going to be put on this as a consumer, how is it going to affect me? If it is going to come from workers, as a worker, how is that going to affect me? Because if the tax is going to be paid by workers, then means I'm going to be deprived of some of my resources that I can use to better myself. So it is not only having a good document and listing all that, how is it going to be paid for? Is it by taxes? Is it by borrowing? Is it by grant? Two, if it is going to be by borrowing, where is it going to, the borrowing going to take place? Is it going to take place in Ghana or outside? When I say Ghana, I'm talking about domestic borrowing. If a party intends to borrow from the domestic market, then businesses in that country are going to suffer because they are going to be forced to compete with the government in the borrowing market. And most companies or most banking organizations tend to borrow money to the government than businesses. So if the things that I have listed in the document are going to be paid for by borrowing from the domestic market, then as a businessman, I have to think twice, because then it means I'm going to compete with the government for resources, and that may affect me badly. So these are the things that as a voter, I have to look at, not only reading beautiful things written in the book, but how are they going to be financed? If it is by international fund from, say, World Bank or from IMF, how is it going to affect the geopolitical situation of my country? Right now, we know that China is seizing harbors, seizing infrastructures in several countries because they were the people who provided the funds. So if I am going to borrow from China, and in the next 2 years I can't pay China, will the countries cease to exist? Or will the country's strategic importance be diluted? If that is yes, then I'm not going to vote for that manifesto, though it looks good, but I know that it may harm the strategic importance of my country. And that is one of the reasons why, if I'm going to vote, some of these things that I'm going to look at. If it will not allow me to enjoy my salary in terms of taxation, I may not vote for it, even though it may look good. If it is going to affect businesses, making businesses unable to grow, expand, employ, I may not vote for it as a businessman. If it is going to affect me because I am more than 45 or I'm more than 50, and it doesn't provide for adequate health resources, I may not vote for it because it means that it is not taking care of my interest. So as a good manifesto or as an individual, as an electorate, I am going to vote for a party's manifesto based on several things, not just what is written beautifully in that document, but critically, whether it can be implemented. If it cannot be implemented, then I'm not going to waste my vote on that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eduse. But maybe just a quick one. I think I like one of your points that you raised, that the citizens should ask themselves what they need. And it corroborates what Prof already said, that the manifesto begins with a question. So I guess the question citizens ask or should ask themselves is, what do I need? And in that case, is this manifesto capable of addressing this need for me? But I wanted to ask it in this way also. Should it be what the individual needs, or it should be more of a collective interest? So that what if as an individual, a particular political party promises something which favors me, but does not inure to the benefit of the general citizens. It might even affect the public purse in the end. What do you say to that also? Should I vote based on addressing needs of the better good of the society, or just as an individual?
I think that the country does well when the entire population or the society, when that society is doing well. But if individuals are doing well and the broader society isn't doing well, then that country has a problem. I mean, that country may be heading towards a very dangerous path. So if the manifesto is addressing my personal needs, but it is not addressing the strategic societal needs, I'm not going to vote for it. For instance, Dr. Ishmael made a very good point about employment. If I just get employed, but I can see thousands of my colleagues who are not employed, I shouldn't be happy, because these people are the very people who will take up arms when there is a civil war. So the broader societal needs should be considered rather than individual needs. However, the individual needs, when it is addressed, can also allow for the broader societal needs to be addressed. But I will vote for a party or a manifesto that makes a point of addressing societal needs than individual needs. Okay. The society is good. When we say the West, or when we say Europe or America, it is, if you go there, not only individual, the society itself is doing well. Sure. But if you go to Ghana, or say go to Nigeria, for instance, you have individuals who are fabulous, they living as if they own the world. But for instance, look at statistics in Nigeria, 70% of the population is poor, 70%. So if a society like that, if it is individuals who are enjoying, that society is heading on a dangerous path. So manifestos must address societal needs than individual needs.
Thank you very much. And
before Evans, before you go
Doctor.
On,
sure,
Evans,
go ahead.
Can I just 1 second? Yeah, I want to say that, just to add a little bit, I want to say that the individual needs is actually intertwined with the societal needs most of the time. Okay. So I think that a political party or a government is supposed to focus on providing public goods. So you provide roads, electricity, water. These are goods that benefit everybody. So, I mean, they are not significantly different from the individual needs and the public needs. So they are quite intertwined. So as government provide public goods, it also satisfies the needs of the individual as well. Yeah, just a comment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Reku. Before I come to you, gentlemen, for your concluding remarks, Albert also would like to give another intervention. But before you come in, I would like to hear from Edmond, who has not yet given any intervention on the show yet. Edmond, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me too?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you very much.
Good to have you on the show anyway. And yes, you said you wanted to have some inputs. Go ahead, please.
I'm really enjoying the discussion, and I think the panelists are doing a fantastic job of dissecting the issue and suggesting interesting and brilliant ideas. But one of the ideas caught my attention when we talked about the National Development Plan, and also an idea given by Prof, who said we need an independent body. But the problem we have here is that there has been many attempts by the government of Ghana or the people of Ghana to have something called a National Development Plan, and it has not been working. And my opinion is, you can have a National Development Plan, but the problem is with the fidelity. You cannot force the political parties to implement those agendas. And that is a missing link in our bid to have a sustainable and consistent development agenda. And this is what we, the concerned citizens of Ghana, or the people of Africa, if it happens in other countries, we are asking, because we are sick and tired of uncompleted projects and abandoned projects costing nations billions and billions of money that nobody really cares about. So my suggestion would be, it is fantastic to have a national development plan, but we should also negotiate and push the agenda to have a national body that overlooks this national development plan. And the national development plan must not be binding. So in my opinion, it would be like a pool of ideas, but a pool of kind of binding ideas, but you don't tell political parties to follow it A, B, C, D. So I tell you, we meet as a national development plan body. We say for the next 20 years, this is where we want to take our country in various aspects. Say in health, say in infrastructure, say in education. And then political parties would have to draft their manifesto picking from what is in the national agenda. So you can make your manifesto yourself, but it's like you make a cocktail from what we have drafted from this national agenda and present to the people of Ghana. In this sense, we know that we are building a sustainable and consistent country, because whatever you pick is something that has been thought about, it has been approved, it has been vetted, and we know that it is consistent. So until we get to that point and we leave it to the discretion of people sitting in different parties and also being influenced by other people, and then, like you said, these are just math or lip service just to win yourself votes. But in actuality, we don't see them implementing it, because how do we experience all these mismatches that Lord talked about? So my simple suggestion would be, we need a national development plan, but with a different approach, not that it becomes a binding document for politicians to necessarily follow to the letter. However, it becomes a pool of approved, vetted ideas from which political parties will mix their own ideas to sell to the populace. In that sense, at the end of your office, in the middle, whatever, we can go to your political manifesto, which aligns with the National Development Plan, and see if you could achieve what is there or not. Then it answers Lord's point of, is it measurable? Has it been costed? All this has been done by the National Development Body that does the measurement and the costing and everything for you to know this is a well-approved, vetted standard plan that you can easily just pick from there, put it in your manifesto. So it would look like, what does the different parties want to focus on? So maybe part A is focused on health and part B might be focused on education. That would be the distinction. However, the details of what they are proposing to us is something every Ghanaian should know, because it
but
is
then,
something that,
Edmond, sorry I like your idea of the national development plan
intertwining it, like looking at it differently. Yeah.
But then my question is, so what would the political parties be doing? All political parties will take the idea of this national development plan or body, whatever, and they will all present to us that this is what we want to do as stated in the national. So where lies the competition then?
Where lies the competition? Do you want a country where we are competing but we are not moving forward? Obviously not. So the question is, what is then the composition of this national development body? This is where we bring all the brains from all the different political parties, from experts, as we all said, from stakeholders, and then we sit down and draft it. We don't need a competition in development of our countries. We need to keep moving forward. So we bring the heads that matter. We sit down. It's very inclusive with all the political parties. It's something we all agree on. Look, we all see what we need. We know what we need. So if we bring a team of people from representing different sections, political parties, whatever, and we sit down and we draft a policy, no one can come back tomorrow and say this doesn't reflect my ideology or whatever it is, because it has been vetted. So the problem will be the composition of this body and the work of this body. And we should place much importance on the work of this body, because like I said, we need two things: a sustainable and consistent development agenda. And if we can draft it as a body of ideas from which anybody can draw their own manifesto from and combine it in any different way they want, that would be fantastic. And I promise you, it wouldn't be the same. And even if it's the same, it's enough for the development of our countries that we are looking for.
So if it's just one quick question, I mean, just for if it's the same, which party will you vote for?
If it's the same, which party you know? So I tell you for a fact, in Ghana, there is no distinction between the political parties.
Well, this could be a topic for another day. I'm afraid.
If it's the same, you look at who can implement it, and that's what we are seeing right now.
Okay.
They are proposing almost the same thing. I mean, named differently or maybe clothed differently, whatever it is. But what you look for is who can do what he's saying. Because if I tell you I'll give you money, and Albert tells you he will give you the same money, how do you decide? Like we say in our dialect, so that's where it boils down to. So it's not about people saying the same thing.
Okay, I get your point, well made. I guess it's also what Lord said, so that if it's the same, probably you look at the expertise and where they will get their funding and other things from. I'm afraid there's no time. So Albert,
thank you very much.
Can you hear me? You're welcome. Albert.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, please do it quickly, 2 minutes. You also said you had some interventions.
Thank you so much. I think your panel members have done fantastically a great job to the discussion ongoing, and I really love many of the submissions that have been presented. I would like to make a few. You know, I want to start by what Edmond said, and also what Professor Opoku also alluded. Also, Opoku seems to be more in favor of national development policy, which I also accede to. And Edmond said that the national development plan, he is advocating for one which is not so much of legally binded, but I differ. I think that through a legislative instrument, we could have a legally bind national development plan for political parties to come and follow. Professor Buku said last week that, you know, when you win election, competition ends there. Competition ends there. Now it's about the national development agenda and how you're going to move the nation forward. Other than that, the party, you are serving your political, the people who voted for you or people who belong to your camp. But you are serving the whole nation. So that I think that through a legislative instrument, we can make a national development plan or policy binding for political parties or every government that comes in power to follow. Then the other thing that I will also like to talk about is that, you know, Mr. Lord Edison was talking about what the constitution, what the citizens will have to look at in order to see if a manifesto is credible and will serve their need. I think one particular element that had also not been captured is that the citizens should also look at a political party manifesto that also looks at constitutional reforms at the national level. A typical example is a reform that caps the number or that limits the size of government. I think it is something that should be looked at. You know, political parties win power, they come to power, they appoint, because the president has the executive power to do all the kinds of appointment that he can. They appoint over 120 ministers, with regional ministers, with district directors, with MCEs. Everything is done by the president. You know, we need to look at constitutional reforms that caps the number of government appointees you can actually bring into government, so that you come and just, you know, appoint any number that you actually want, just as we have seen in some government. We also have to look at a manifesto, taking from what Dr. Reku said, and a manifesto that actually invests in the informal economy. Especially, I am more of a mining person. Ghana is more of an informal economy, you know. And so the manifesto should look at how we are going to invest into the informal economy. A typical example of an informal economy that is sidelined is even artisanal small-scale mining. You know, I had always advocated that the way to go with artisanal small-scale mining is misplaced, because they are using.
I'm sorry, I'm sure we'll have time to discuss about mining and artisanal small scale mining. If you don't mind, for the sake of time, if you can just end in some seconds for us.
So the informal economy, investment into the informal economy and manifesto that looks at that, typically the small scale mining sector, and a shift from the agrarian economy could also help. Then also a manifesto that looks at massive education of the citizenry. It is only when the citizens are well educated that they can make informed decisions. So we should also look at that, that point. And the last thing that I would like to talk about is a manifesto that we have the political will to execute most of the items that have been itemized in the National Development Plan, as well as also the manifesto.
Thank you very much, Mr. Albert Kobina-Mensah, for your interventions. Thank you also, Edmond Yeboah, also for your intervention. So, gentlemen, I think we don't have time. If I would have loved to hear your take on what Edmond and Albert said, in particular concerning the National Development Plan and having a body to vet and order. But I think it's also virtually the same thing that has been said, particularly Professor Pukwentri touched on, having this ministry to supersede some of these things. And I would love you all to give me your concluding remarks regarding, we're moving into election 2020, and we know very soon our political parties, in the case of Ghana, would come out with their manifestos very, very soon. What would you say? So I would want you to touch on, again, I normally love the citizens, the society. What should we expect from these political parties that makes their promises credible for us? So I start with you, Dr. Rekun, your concluding remarks as far as promoting a sustainable and responsible political party manifesto is concerned.
As we enter into 2020 elections, I expect political parties to consider the role of science in development of their manifestos. Okay, we don't need to just have 2 or 3 people in a room to, think through issues and then come up with a manifesto document. I think manifesto needs to be backed by research. They have to really examine the society we live in, and then try to understand the various facets of the problems we face, and then come up with programs that will target them, And also, it do say talk about it, but they have to cost their manifestos, and they can do so only when they involve expertise, researchers, science policies analysts, and so that they can examine the pros and cons and look at various dimensions of their manifestos. Otherwise, we'll have one-time premium, one village, one down, and they will never come to fruition. So as we go into the next election, this is what I'm actually advising political parties to do in order to make sure that we have a very proper election, and as well as society after the election, so that government can put their manifestos into practice and not just becoming intentions and visions that never materialize in the well-being and the life condition of the people. That's going to help a lot. And so we should do that in this coming election.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rekun. That's awesome. I come to you, Mr. Lord Edusei. What's your concluding remark?
I will say to the Ghanaian population, especially the voters, that they should be looking out for political parties that are going to tell them over ambitious things. Because if you look at the history of Ghana, especially from 1982, political parties have been promising heaven and earth. They will build castles in the air, they will make everybody's life better. But the opposite has always been the situation or the case. So therefore, the voters should be very, very careful not to fall for political parties that are going to promise them honey and milk. They should vote for political parties that are going to tell them simple things based on Ghana's needs. Ghana has so many priorities. Political parties that are going to address these priorities should be the ones the Ghanaians should be aiming at voting for. But they shouldn't just be voting for them. They should look at where and how they are going to finance these projects. Because I can list so many things that I would like to do for Ghana, but have I got the means to deliver it? Therefore, they should look out for political parties that can actually deliver what they promise in their manifestos. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lord Edusei. And then the final bite to you, Professor Opoku-Antwi, your concluding remark.
Thank you very much, Evans. I want to recommend my colleagues for the wonderful job done. Picking on their brains, they've done a good job. I wish Ghanaians can have discerning minds when we get into elections like this. Our manifesto should not be selfish. It should have altruistic value where we think about the common good of the people. I'm thinking about post-COVID-19 era, where we're going to need institutional reforms in training, in creating values, healthcare, taking care of the elderly. We should have these in our manifestos. Then our manifestos have always been freebies. I'll give you free this, free that. I don't know how free things could be in a manifesto. We should be thinking about how we can recycle. Next time I recycle, I will make these cities clean. We should be thinking about commercial farming. We should be thinking about silos for storage. We should be thinking about processing our gold and diamond instead of taking them outside. We should be thinking about car assembling and the manufacturing companies. We should be thinking about quality jobs for our people. We should be thinking about justice system. We should be thinking about corruption and the ways we're going to solve them. These things should be in our manifestos, not the free things. And thank you all for sharing your ideas with me.
Thank you very much, Professor Opoku-Antwi. Thank you also, Mr. Lord Edusei, and then thank you very much, Dr. Ishmael Rekun. Thanks also to Albert and Edmond who shared their inputs with us, lovely inputs with us. So viewers, this is how far time would permit us. We could have gone on and on and on, but I'm sure you've been educated and you've been informed. As we move into election 2020, please vote wisely. Do not just vote for a political party based on frivolous assumptions and unattainable promises, but vote wisely, assess the manifestos and make sure that manifestos should benefit the greater good of the society, because this is what we seek to preach, a better society for all. My name is Evans Apia Kisi, the host of SEPSA Talk. Thank you, and see you in our next episode. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.